let me ask you this. If Mexico was holding drills, and in those drills, Mexico was pretending or going with this idea of invading, let's say, Florida, or let's say Texas. Let's say Mexico was doing military drills where they were talking about invading Texas. Now, not necessarily saying that they were going to invade Texas, but let's say for whatever reason they decided to hold those drills. What would the response of the United States be? Do you think that if a country was being somewhat belligerent within our direction, we would just kind of sit by and just look at them with this passive glance, or do you think we would take certain actions about it? Now, we would respond. Not the invasion itself, but we would respond because we would take their actions as being belligerent. Oh, the internet is acting up. I may need to switch. Yeah, I may need to switch my internet coverage. Well, all right, it's stabilizing. We will respond. Now, I say that to say this. Other countries are the same. Meaning if another country believed that it was under threat of attack, it would respond in kind to what they consider to be a threat. That's not just us, that's any country. Even countries that we consider like North Korea. Now, especially when there was history with North Korea, from the standpoint of North Korea, we are still at war. We dropped, what? We killed a fifth of their population in the last war with North Korea. Now, we forget about that. Many of the people in America probably couldn't even point North Korea on the map. And even fewer still may even know that we've been in a war with North Korea. But we fought a brutal war. We dropped so many bombs. I think they said that there was nothing left unbombed. Something to that effect, killing a fifth of the population. Now, I say that to say this. From the perspective of North Korea, looking out at the world, you have somebody who's being belligerent. We've not kept our deals with North Korea. We added them to the axis of evil, meaning the response of North Korea and the behavior of North Korea is not necessarily just separate and distinct. It's not as if that their behavior and the things that the country was doing was purely isolated from everything else. They are responding to environmental influences. The environmental influence in this particular case is a certain degree of belligerence from us. We took out Gaddafi. One of the people who were running in the presidential race as Gaddafi was being sodomized giggled at the man being sodomized with a machete. We've broken our agreements. Now, if you're North Korea, and not saying, again, when I make these arguments, I'm not making the argument from the standpoint that it's great to live in North Korea or that Pyongyang is just fucking awesome. I make it from a perspective of, in the same way that we respond to factors around the world, other countries also respond to factors around the world. If we do something, if it looks like we're being belligerent, those countries will consider us a threat and they will respond in kind. The nuclear weapon that North Korea has is done to protect North Korea. It's not necessarily a thing to attack anybody. It looks at the United States as being a belligerent rogue nation, and as being a belligerent rogue nation, may attack them. They look at the nuclear weapon as being their weapon. It's for the same reason that Iran wants to get a nuclear weapon, or at the very least was trying to get a nuclear weapon at one point. That's assuming you believe what the United States is saying in that regard. But they would be insane not to. Let me say it that way. North Korea is not going to give up its nuclear weapons because that's the only thing that keeps North Korea safe. By the same token, North Korea would never use that nuclear weapon because if they did, it would be evaporated within the course of a few hours. The thing is, we need to pay attention to that, though, even though we don't. We ignore the perspectives of the country itself that we're engaging and interacting with. Whatever you want to say about Donald Trump, one of the positive things that has taken place during this particular presidency has been, you could say, softening of tensions between the two countries. Donald Trump is a salesman. The moment that he had the talk with Kim Jong-un and he comes away from it, all of a sudden it's effusive praise of the kingdom. Now the praise is nonsense, but it's purely because I'm trying to make a deal with this guy, making a deal with this guy, it makes me look good, and so this is the way I'm going to go about it. But it allowed a luft, it allowed a small area where some positive can take place. And I would argue it has. One of the new steps that has taken place in this kind of diffusing of tensions between the North and South and to try to normalize relations between the two countries is they want to remove the landmines, but they also want to enact a no-fly zone. Now, the United States is against them enacting a no-fly zone because this would prevent essentially air support and air drills that take place over the country. One of the big sticking points that North Korea, that's stuck in their craw, were these activities where the United States would work with South Korea in these kind of military exercises in which they would pretend to invade North Korea. You can imagine that if that was you, you would feel some kind of way about that too. You have these guys who are pretending to invade your country. That was a sticking point. Well, they're trying to tone those down and they're trying to de-escalate. Now, this is a good thing. Personally, I think this is a great thing. This war has raged on. This war has never ended. Even though there's been this kind of armistice, this war has still stayed there. And these guys have been leering at each other from across this demilitarized zone. It's time to put this to rest. Take a look at this. Unfortunately, the United States is against this. I don't think they should be, though. The United States opposes the Korea's plan for a no-fly zone over the border. Fact is, if you want to get anything, you're going to have to give something. If you want to get peace, you're going to have to get some level of fairness and parity. Meaning, if North Korea issue is you guys are doing these military drills pretending to invade our country, maybe if you stop those drills, we will stop firing missiles into the sea. No, you're not going to get them to denuclearize. Maybe, but if they have good sense, they would not. But trying to normalize relations in other ways, yes, they should. And this is a good step. And it is not one we should be opposed to. The United States opposes a plan by North and South Korea to set up a no-fly zone over the heavily fortified border, the latest sign of a rift between the Seoul and its top ally, the two sources familiar with the matter told Reuters. Washington and Seoul both publicly insist that they're on the same page about dealing with Pyongyang. Behind the scenes, there's growing signs of disagreement at the South and North Korea's forge ahead with plans to defuse military tensions and rebuild economic ties. You should. That's a good thing. The military accord sealed during last month's summit in Pyongyang is one of the most concrete agreements between the neighbors this year. But the United States officials have raised concerns that it could undermine defensive readiness and comes without substantial progress on denuclearization. You're not going to get denuclearization. That's a horrible standard. If that's your standard, nothing is going to take place from the standpoint of peace. That's nonsense. The pact includes a halt in all hostilities. The pact includes a halt in all hostile acts, a no-fly zone around the border, and a gradual removal of landmines and guard posts within the demilitarized zone. United States Secretary of State Pompeo expressed discontent with the agreement during a phone call. South Korea's Foreign Minister Kang Kwang-wha said last week in a rare disclosure that the discord between the allies. The United States was not likely to openly protest against an inter-Korea initiative, Seoul officials said, but its deep involvement in the sanctions enforcements and military operations give it leverage to delay or change the policy. Essentially, because of the sanctions that the United States has implemented and you could say its engagement with North and South Korea, they have the potential to slow the process down, if not stop it altogether. Our involvement in the country goes deep. The zone, effective November 1st, would extend 40 kilometers north and south from the military demarcation line in the east and 20 kilometers to the west for fixed-wing aircraft. The agreement also bars live fire drills involving fixed-wing aircraft and air-to-ground guided weapons in a no-fly area. South Korea and the United States has held such drills regularly until halting joint exercises in June. That part is the part that needs to be understood. They've been holding these military exercises as if they were going to invade North Korea. Now, if you're North Korea, you've just seen the United States destroy Iraq, Afghanistan. You've just seen them destroy Libya, or at the very least NATO. NATO is pretty much led by the United States, destroy Libya. You've just seen the leader of that country sodomize. What are you going to think? What do you think? Honestly, what do you think? These guys are at your border pretending to invade your country. Gaddafi gave up his attempt at a nuclear weapon. Are you going to give up your nuclear weapon and trust that the United States is not going to do the same thing to you as it did to them? Or are you going to hold on to that nuclear weapon with dear life and use it to essentially bite the hand that tries to invade your country? The nuclear weapon wasn't there for an offensive capability. It was there for defensive capability. That's a key point to understand. The military drills, as if they were invading South Korea, causes a certain degree of tension. If somebody was pretending to invade your country, how would you behave and how would you act? That's a key point that needs to be understood. Let's keep going. There are different restrictions on helicopters, drones, and balloons, with exceptions for commercial and non-military operations such as medical, disaster, and agricultural uses. In close air support, airplanes provide firepower for troops who will be operating near enemy forces. Most fighter jets that the United States operate in Seoul, Korea, such as F-16, can play that role, one of the sources said. An official at Seoul's foreign ministry said Pompeo had not been fully briefed when he complained about the inter-Korean deal and called back later today to wish Kang good luck with the summit. The U.S. Defense Department declined to comment. This is a good thing. This is a good thing. Are you sick of North Korea firing missiles over Japan? I am. I'm going to be visiting Japan soon. I don't want them firing missiles over my head. I want these two to reconcile and come together. And if they're in a position to do so, I want them to do it. Trust and verify, yes. But you got to give something to get something. And one of the things that you need to give, especially if it's a crawl in there or a splinter in their paw in this case, are those drills. Give it a try. Give it a try. After all, if anything pops off, it's South Korea that's going to take the hit. So, let's see who's here. The U.S. needs to get out of the Korean Peninsula. Yes, but it needs to allow South Korea and North Korea to reconcile in the way that they need to reconcile. I mean, after all, South Korea is the one that has to deal with, them firing missiles off and everything else. Yeah, they need to allow South Korea to handle its own affairs in this case. Agreed. Welcome to Portugal. Thank you, Dolores. All right. Good morning. I agree. Peace, please. Natural progressive. I agree also. Peace is a better option, especially if you have willing partners. And it seems like these guys are willing partners. They are not giving up their nuclear weapons, or at the very least, they will be insane to do so. They will be utterly insane to do so. If the only thing that has allowed you to have this level of diplomatic interaction is that you have the threat of a nuclear bomb, not so much that you're going to use it, but more so you have it as a threat as a preventative weapon, why would you give that up? And why would you give that up in the context of a country, of the United States, have destroyed other countries that didn't have the capability of a nuclear weapon? I guess my point is, denuclearization should not be a bar for negotiation, nor should it be a bar for interaction between the countries. North Korea would never use that nuclear weapon unless North Korea is attacked. Do I know that as a flat fact? It's impossible for me to know. Probability-wise, they will much likely not use it. And if I am not mistaken, they have said so themselves that this is somewhat of a defensive capability. We characterize North Korea as if they're insane, as if they're run by insane people and all this other stuff. It is not a country where I would want to live. And yes, the people in the country are brainwashed. All of that part is true. But it is a different thing on whether or not the person who's running the country is a rational agent. Most likely he doesn't want to die. And most likely he doesn't want to be invaded. And that is the most rational thing in the world. That's the most rational thing in the world to do. What would you do in a situation where they're pretending as if your country is going to be invaded, or they're holding military exercises invading your country? You'd feel some kind of way about it, and you'd want those military exercises to stop. As a precondition for peace, it needs to stop. Allow North and South Korea to defuse and reconcile. This is a good thing. So I'll leave it here. All right, guys. If you enjoyed the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support the Patreon. And yes, this is a good thing. Whatever I want to say about Donald Trump, at the very least, the preconditions for peace was at least initiated under his watch. Hopefully he doesn't stand in the way of allowing this to go through. So, but we'll see. But clap of the hands for defusing tensions between North and South Korea. Thanks all.